Hello and welcome to today's training. I'm Will Pritchard from Uncaged Ventures and I'll be online while you're training today to answer any questions. So feel free to pause at any point, ask me to explain something, to repeat anything, or to let the translator catch up. Uncaged Ventures is a company in the UK that designs and delivers support for entrepreneurs just like you. I love Gaza, so I'm really sad that I can't be with you today, but hopefully you find the training useful. You should have already had a baseline survey from your facilitator. If you have not already completed it, please do so. It helps us check whether the training is as useful as it can be. So let's start by looking at what our learning objectives today are. The first is to understand what networking is and what it is not. The second is to understand the theory behind networking. The third is to recognise the importance of networking and the benefits you can get from it. Next is to explore your networking community and select your network ambassadors. Then to understand the stages of networking and what is important in each stage to network effectively. And finally to design an elevator pitch and understand how it can be used to network effectively. The key concepts we'll look at today are first, social network theory, secondly, stakeholders, thirdly, network ambassadors, and fourthly, the elevator pitch. Let's start by looking at networking. What is it and what is it not? It's not a quick fix. Networking is all about building relationships, not just knowing as many names and numbers as possible. Crucially, it's a two-way process. You make contacts that may be beneficial to you, and you offer information and assistance in return. Networking should become a lifelong habit that you use in and out of work. So let's look at the theory behind networking and why it's relevant to your startup. Social network theory is the key thing to look at here. It's the study of how people, organisations or groups interact with other people inside their network. It refers to the connection between individual people, groups and organisations and the relationships that bind them. A network refers to the relationship between specific individuals that are being studied. And the three types of network that are relevant to your startup are egocentric networks. That's a network connected by a single individual or member of your team, like your close friends. Sociocentric networks. That's a closed network, like children in a classroom, workers in an organisation, or this training class. And open system networks. In these there are no clearly defined boundaries. It could be the people that influence your work, the connections between organisations and startups. And there are two types of relationships. The first are strong relationships. People or organisations that you and your startup are particularly close to. Say you have a direct means of contacting them. And the second are weak relationships. Those are the people who you are less likely to talk to on a regular basis, but are often thought of as more valuable for your startup than strong relationships because of their connections with other organisations. So why should social network theory be studied? It gives us an understanding of why individuals interact, and that's important for recognising behavioural patterns and the value gained from social networks. It gives us an understanding of how individuals interact. That's really important in working out how individuals develop relationships and what barriers there are between individuals, groups and organisations. And it gives us an understanding of the connectedness or level of closeness between group members, and that's really important for determining what types of relationships form strong bonds and what ones form weak bonds. Why is that relevant to your startup? Well, it helps you understand the different kinds of relationships that exist within your networks, and enables you to consider how different groups have different relationships with each other, and helps you to identify the influence that your direct stakeholders have. There are two key concepts based on social network theory that will help you understand how and why to network. Those are 6 degrees of separation and the Dunbar number. Let's start by looking at 6 degrees of separation. This concept is an outcome of the small world problem experiment in the 1960s, conducted by Stanley Milgram. He gave 100 identical letters to random people in Midwest USA and asked them to post it to a stranger located in Massachusetts. The first person with the letter was given the recipient's name, occupation and general location, and then told to send it to a person that they knew on a first-name basis who they thought might know the target. On average, it only took between 5 and 7 people to get to the desired target, though some letters simply disappeared on their journey. As a result, it was suggested that there are a maximum of 6 other individuals between you and every other person on the planet. though this number is manipulated by the rise of social networking. Though 6 degrees of separation may stand for some forms of relationship, social media has reduced this number dramatically. A study in 2011 suggested that, on average, there were only 4.74 people separating any 2 individuals across Facebook's 721 million users. This average varied across different countries, with the US having an average of 4.37 people. In 2010, a study of 5.2 million Twitter friendships, that's when an account both follows and is followed by another account, suggested that the most common friendship distance was 5 steps away, with an average of 4.67. LinkedIn is based on a maximum of 3 degrees of separation, meaning that you already know them, you know someone that knows them, or you know someone that knows someone that knows them. In doing this, LinkedIn creates opportunities to develop new relationships with connections that are 2 or 3 degrees away. Social media continues to present a new form of relationship, one that is informal but based on the sharing of information. Let's look at our second key concept here, the Dunbar number. One thing social media does do is problematize other established understandings of human relationships. The Dunbar number refers to the number of people an average person can have in their social group. Robert Dunbar, an anthropologist and psychologist, came up with the number when working on the social brain hypothesis. The number he came up with for a human was 150. This means that the number of people the average human could have in their social group would be 150. Any more than that would be too complicated for our brains to handle. There are also specific numbers for specific relationships. Best friends or closest family members, 5. Support group, 15. Close friends, 50. Casual friends, 150. People you've met or acquaintances, 500. And people you recognise, 1500. The people in these groups and the exact number in each group are not fixed. Some argue that with the advent of social media, it is easier than ever to create and maintain connections and friendships. This potentially creates a shift in the group size suggested above. Though it's easier to maintain casual relationships and acquaintances, it becomes more difficult to create the deeper connections needed for closer friendships or working relationships. It is more important than ever to make the right kind of connection to give your startup the best chance of success. Let's look at understanding the importance or benefits of networking. What do you think some of the benefits of networking are? Pause this video whilst you have a discussion. Let's see what Ash Phillips, Director of the Young Entrepreneurs Networking Association, has to say about networking.
Hi everybody, my name is Ash Phillips and I run YENA, the networking organisation for young entrepreneurs between the ages of 15 and 35. We organise events and online services across the UK and we're expanding internationally to help connect people across the world. What is networking? Well, networking is the art of connecting with other people and connecting those people together. It's a way of surrounding yourself with potential clients, potential suppliers, potential members of staff. What are the benefits of networking? Well, networking has many benefits. It can help increase your confidence in your own business firstly. So the more you talk to people about what you do, the more you start to understand it and the easier it becomes to sell. It's quite obvious a lot of the time that a lot of people know exactly what they do, but they don't really know how to convey that in a very short period of time to somebody so that they understand it enough that they can buy from you. So getting out there and chatting to people gives you that practice that you need. But the most important part of networking, I think, is that it gives you an audience to sell to and an audience that can sell for you, as I've already mentioned. So the people you're surrounding yourselves with could be potential clients, or more likely than not, know people who could be your clients. And if you arm them with the right information and the right tools and the right story about your business, then they can easily go out and sell your services for you without even having to ask them. Networking's benefited me in many ways. Undoubtedly, the main way that networking has benefited me is in being able to build a sustainable business through the ability of connecting people and being able to sell to them. I've been able to land some of the largest clients I've ever had through networking. Over the years, I've landed contracts that are worth thousands of pounds because of being able to work with people like that. So how should you network? Well, as with anything, practice makes perfect, and going to multiple events and setting yourself outside your comfort zone will always help you progress and develop a better technique in doing what you do. When it comes to networking, I find that going against the grain can be very powerful for developing really strong sales opportunities. So for example, when I was running a social media company just under a year ago, we would go to events such as the Boat Show in London, where we would know that as opposed to the business show in London, there would be virtually nobody there selling social media services. However, a lot of these brands have larger budgets and they're interesting companies to work for, and they're consumer facing, so they needed social media to be able to reach their customer base and their clients. So we would go under the guise of being just simple consumers at the event without having to pay for a stand or a stall, and we would speak to the owners of the businesses and the business development people and discuss with them how we could kind of work with them. So once you've started building those relationships, you've met those people at those first few networking events, how do you build on them afterwards? Well, that's actually fairly easy. I make a point at every event I go to of not necessarily handing out business cards, but collecting them. If you collect business cards, it's much easier to be able to follow up with people rather than giving them a card and hoping that they email you. From there, I would then make sure I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, Twitter, for example, and just keep track of what they're doing on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Networking events can be scary, but they can be awesome at the same time. And in running networking events, what experiences have I had that I can tell you about? There was a very expensive networking event once. That initial conversation, that event that was very short, ended up working into being about £15,000 worth of a contract for per year for us at my old company. So my top tips on networking effectively. What can you do to make sure that you're making the most of being in the room? Well, the first one is what I just discussed, listening. It's undervalued completely. Sit there and stand there and listen to what people have to say and let them tell you about their business. Almost up until the point, or even all the way up until the point, they say, hey, look, I've been talking for ages. Tell me about your business and what you do. And at that point, you'll be armed with all of the information they've given you to, if you want to, subtly turn it into a sales opportunity. But don't sell. Just build that conversation and build that relationship. If they've mentioned something that you guys have in common, then touch on that and start to build the rapport. And as the rapport grows, the conversation grows, and then that awkwardness disappears, and you're able to build that relationship over time. Business cards are always important. A lot of people wonder if they're relevant anymore now that we've got the age of the smartphone and LinkedIn and Twitter, etc. But I think they're still very important. If somebody asks you for a business card and you say, no, I don't have one, then regardless of whether you like it or not, it has a negative impact on the first impression that you make in your business. And the final thing to remember when you are networking at these events, and my other tip, is that everybody is just as nervous as you are. So be the person that connects them, be the person that stands out, and be the person that is able to be confident enough to approach them and say hello, because they're going to be appreciative of that, and they're going to remember that.
Now let's hear from Abby Scarborough of startup Opportune about her experience of networking.
I'm part of a startup called Opportune. My name's Abby and I'm the director. We are creating an open access platform for creative performers across the southwest of England. To me, networking is about building your community of support that you can help and also can help you. So some of the benefits of networking are you get to meet some really interesting people. It also gives you access to other career opportunities, that's other career pathways, a bit of insight into what other people do. You can also learn from other people's experiences, and that's something that I and the rest of my team have found immensely valuable. So how has networking benefited Opportune directly? So actually, us as founders, we all met at a networking event. through that event, we also met some other incredible people from the industry that we want to work in. So we've had access to a free consultancy through someone that we met at that event. She's helping us put together our pitches for funding. Individually, we've also all made use of networking through employment opportunities, internships, work experience, that sort of thing. Okay, so generally speaking, we have to be quite proactive in our approach. As a startup, we definitely tend to approach other people. That's predominantly because we're still trying to raise awareness of what we're doing and also getting other people aware of what we're trying to achieve. So we think that being proactive has been a crucial part of developing our networking community. So after you've met people through networking, it's crucial to follow up with those relationships afterwards. So for every introduction that we get or every new contact that we make, we always follow up with an email afterwards, and if possible, we'll always add them on LinkedIn. We also, because a lot of the people that we work with from community backgrounds aren't necessarily particularly tech savvy, we always make sure that we either add them on Facebook or take some whatever form of contact information they have so that we can get into contact with them afterwards. Also, if we thought that we could benefit from more insight after we've met these people, we would always arrange to a follow-up meeting to gain more insight. So some tips that we have for networking effectively, I think the most important thing, especially as a startup, would be to be proactive. People aren't going to come to you, especially at the start, and you need to get your name out there as best as possible. Something that we found really useful is being able to describe what you do simply in an understandable way. So we have what our organisation does done into a very succinct kind of 2-line, 20-second little piece that we can then, when people ask us what we do, we can then relate that very easily. But also, what we do is still very subject to change at the moment, so we make sure that that's very flexible and it isn't very rigid, so that we can adapt it to the people that we're speaking to and also what may have changed in our organisation. One thing I'd say is be prepared to ask lots of questions and engage with what other people do. If you can know who's going to be in the room beforehand, then that's immensely helpful. If you know who you're going to meet, then do your research about them. But if that isn't possible, then just make sure you're really paying attention to what other people are saying to you, because if you sound interested, that's how you develop those relationships, and that's why people are going to want to invest their time and their energy in you. My final tip would be something that I personally have benefited immensely from and so have opportune is get involved in actually managing these events, because it is a great way to meet other people and also gives you an excuse. It sounds silly, but it gives you an excuse to talk to everybody in the room, because you introduce yourself, you're like, I'm actually running this event, and everyone wants to talk to the organisers. So I've found that, and we found that immensely helpful.
Let's talk about the benefits of networking. One might be to create a contact list. That's a pool of relevant contacts who know, trust and respect you. It's always helpful to have a wide network of people, even if you don't need to rely on them immediately. There's potential for new opportunities. The best opportunities are shared person to person in the back channels of organisations. Networking both exposes and introduces you to opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. You can utilise free advice. Networks can advise and keep you up to date with things happening in your field. They exist as a knowledge base for you to tap into. As with anything you can't just take from your network, be prepared to give your own advice through these channels in order to gain the most in return. You can provide assistance. Networking has the potential to offer you more than just advice. People in your network may help with promotion, like a boost in traffic, reputation, sales, etc. Community, helping you build a conversation. Links, sharing of information and news between networks. And introductions, connecting you to people you would like to meet or who they think would be useful. Networking also presents research opportunities, business opportunities, possible career paths, and a chance to understand more about particular occupational areas. You can learn from the experience of others. How have they got to where they are? Do they have any tips? anything you should or should not be doing based on their experience, and surrounding yourself with the right attitudes, habits, associations and worldview can help motivate you towards your goals. Networking can also develop your skills, in particular soft skills, like communication and listening. So those are some of the benefits of networking. Now let's look at understanding who should be in your networking community. Different people in your networking community require different actions and levels of attention. Understanding how individuals and organisations fit into your group can help you manage your time most effectively, whilst making sure you recognise all the aspects of your wider community. So for the low power, low interest group, that's bystanders, the crowd, etc., it is important to monitor their activity, but only with minimal effort. For the low power, high interest group, as customers, users, etc., it is important to keep them informed. For the high power, low interest group, that's gatekeepers, authorizers, etc., it is important to keep them satisfied and involved. For the high power, high interest group, those are key stakeholders, it is important to collaborate with them and manage that relationship closely. So as you can see, the most relevant group in this community is the high power, high interest collection of key stakeholders. This next exercise allows you to recognize who these individuals, groups, and organizations are in order to consider how you manage your relationship with them. Stakeholder mapping. The purpose of this exercise is that it should help you identify the key stakeholders that you need to be aware of within your network. By developing a map, you can see the groups of people that exist within your network and determine the effect that they have on the survival of your venture. Stakeholders are individuals, groups, or organisations that have an interest in or are affected by the outcome of your venture. There are two types of stakeholders. The first are primary stakeholders. These stakeholders are usually internal to your organisation or are people that you have a close relationship with. And the second are secondary stakeholders. These stakeholders are usually external to your organisation. They are not essential to the venture's survival, but are affected by or can affect it. Now, bringing these groups together through a stakeholder map will allow you to engage with your networking community more directly, as well as work out the people that you need to know to take your venture further. So let's do the stakeholder mapping exercise. Either you or your facilitator will have a copy of this exercise. Let's quickly talk through the steps now, and you can refer back to the resource as you work through. Ideally, with your co-founders, write the name of your startup in the centre of a large piece of paper. Draw 3 rings around it. The inner ring is the direct project team. The second ring is primary stakeholders, and the outer ring is secondary stakeholders. Each member of the team should individually list as many stakeholders as they can think of on individual pieces of paper. Then stick those on the map with the most influential stakeholders closer to the centre. Then order the stakeholders into groups and name the groups. Once you've done that, you've mapped the existing relationships within your networking community. Pause the video now and complete the exercise.